Hi, I'm Dr. Carol Strip Whitney, and I'm founder of Gifted Services of Ohio.
I'm Julianne Ash. I'm the director of Midwest Educational Therapy and Associates, also in Ohio.
And we both have worked together, played together, worked with kids together for a very long time, and we care about your kids. So much of our work is you can find in books. They're available on Amazon. Um, we'll move right on and start talking about the child. Who is the gifted child in the home and in the school? Most people have some confusion about the difference between a smart child and a gifted child.
But Carol's book, Helping Gifted Children Soar, has some great charts in it that'll help you tell the difference.
Smart children normally are able to get past upsetting issues. You talk to them, oh, I understand, and they settle down. A gifted child, because of their heightened sensitivities, can oftentimes explode and not get past it. The overwhelmed feeling might take even days to overcome.
Their executive functions are different, so consequently, they can't downregulate those emotions.
So a smart child often becomes tuned in to other people, and they take relationships as they come. They just, this is going to happen and then this is going to happen. Whereas a gifted child, especially highly gifted, becomes so intense that sometimes they just can't handle situations that between when there's excitement, they get over.
And other children don't know how to respond to that intensity. They feel overwhelmed and will tend to back away.
Very often, smart children will work in a, as they say, convergent, linear fashion where they go from one step to the other. A gifted, truly gifted child oftentimes reverses. They start with the end because their brain went there, so they go backwards. They call it reverse engineering, or they simply skim through things very quickly and have trouble explaining what they did.
They've sponged it in, but when they stored it, their executive functions haven't worked to be able to retrieve it.
Big important point. Smart children normally finish, or we hope they're going to finish projects. You may have a very gifted child with, as one mom told me, has a lot of goose eggs, which means a lot of missing assignments. These can happen with extremely bright kids because they are so exact in their head that they want to use the time more or less for themselves and what they're thinking about rather than all the steps in what they need to do to turn it in. They're lost.
Well, and additionally, a lot of these students already know it and they don't see any reason to turn it in, especially if it's a dull, boring, repetitive type of an assignment.
A smart child often gathers facts and they relate to a task and everything just goes step by step. Whereas gifted children often see the cause and effect and the relationships, and they can predict new and interesting outcomes. Smart children also achieve, we hope they all achieve, and what we do is to try to give them the tools in educational therapy so they will achieve. But a smart child is going to enjoy their accomplishments. Things come in a step-by-step manner, where a gifted child may be very dissatisfied with the way things are going. They have to have time to either argue about it or talk about the things that weren't right in the situation.
And our gifted children are oftentimes perfectionistic, wouldn't you say, Carol?
Oh,
it's
very
never
much.
quite good
Never
enough because what's in their head didn't come out on the paper.
A smart child understands reasoning with what's fair. When a teacher says, look, this is what happened, this is a consequence, a highly gifted child may say, it's not fair. Ethics are very important to gifted children. So do gifted children feel stress at a higher level? Well, the answer is
yes.
Very much.
Very much so.
And why? Why is that? There's actually scientifically a difference in the way the brain is formed. A gifted child is going to have more neurons biochemically they're wired differently. The synapses happens much more rapidly. The thinking part of their brain thickens more quickly, and they just process quickly. They have more gray matter. The neural impulses pass from neuron to neuron much more quickly, and the synapses are faster for their thinking. Why do they feel out of sync? Besides the fact that they're thinking things that others aren't.
One of the things too is a lot of these students, if you look at their intelligence level, you're seeing that they're at the 99th percentile. That means out of 100 children, 99 were at or below. So really, when you look at them, they really are out of sync in some respects because they don't have true peers.
So you may have heard of the term asynchronicity. It's been around now maybe 20 years, basically meaning they are out of sync. They're out of sync with themselves. It's a trait that defines it, that defines giftedness. And an example would be, and we talked about a young man that plays the violin very well, but he got to a point where his brain told him what he should be playing, but his hands couldn't make the stretch. So this is often how a gifted child feels. They are very intense, like a sponge, and definitely susceptible to overexcitability. The amygdala is actually larger.
And for those of you that might be unfamiliar with the amygdala, it's a small organ in the middle of the brain that actually helps manage our fight, flight, or freeze activities. You can think of it as the brain's bodyguard.
Really good. Reinforces the content of memory. The asynchronicity sense, because of it, gifted kids send messages to the reactive brain when they're under stress. That's a part that's they just can't get out of. And the prefrontal cortex develops slower.
And the prefrontal cortex is what helps down-regulate. This frontal part, it's developing more slowly. It's not sending the same level, intensity, and amount of settle down signals to that amygdala as you'd see in a neurotypical child.
So how do these differences impact stress level? Everything that the brain transmits for the gifted is heightened. As some people say, you can think of the child with little antennas all over their body. Those little hairs stand up straight, and they're like little wires that go right straight to the amygdala. So how do we define stress? These are the common understandings.
Emotional or physical tension, any event where you're frustrated, angry, upset. Stress is the body's reaction to a challenge. Unfortunately, the amygdala can't tell the difference between a test and a tiger.
Stress is the body's reaction to challenge. When they're all of a sudden something's put upon them, there's a mom saying, what happened to this you were supposed to do?
Yeah.
An instant stress. And the stress is the demand that is putting on the system. Just the whole body is feeling it. So stress is heightened because gifted children are capable of synthesizing so much in their brain. If you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, they work at the higher levels, the analysis, synthesis, and evaluation levels. So that's pretty intense, and it's just going on all the time, and they're taking in it's the associative thinking that comes in like a sponge, everything at once.
Right. And the associative thinking, when you sponge it in like that, on the executive functions aren't robust, so it's not being broken down and stored in categories. You get that what we call tip of the tongue. It's in there, but I can't get my hands on another additional stressor.
Well, hopefully you've heard of, if you've not, educational therapy. That's what we're all about, executive function. So what is it?
It's the processes where we're guiding, directing, managing. And it's managing the cognitive, it's managing the emotional, like the amygdala, and of course the two combined give you the behavioral functions. So the executive function is a toolbox, and we use it by building strengths for the children to perform the actions that are positively directed. And we help with self-control, goal-directed behavior. We want to maximize our outcomes without beating ourselves up.
We might think of it as the conductor of the symphony orchestra. It's the executive function, the prefrontal cortex that controls everything we do. So if we get it under control, we can make our lives flow together.
And
be
as I
meaningful.
tell the student, you can learn to drive your own brain.
Yes, that's a good one. So it works off strategies. So what is the strategy?
Any instructional act or any construct that helps them overcome a difficulty to find success. And what's key is that they're based in the individual's strengths,
Correct.
not in what they can't do.
So we have 4 big categories. First, we have initiation. Now, you may see your child in any one of these or a combination thereof. Initiation.
Whether it's getting started,
right,
or getting restarted when you're stuck.
Right.
That's what we
That's
see
a
a lot
big
with
one.
gifted children.
And planning. How to look ahead, figure out the steps in order to get there, because for many of them, it's just one big thing that all happens at once.
And if you remember, for planning, they're associative thinkers, so they brought it all big in chunks. They don't know how to break it up. Organization of materials. By the way, this is an actual picture from a student of mine's bedroom.
And it all fits together with time management, because if we help them see with multiple strategies, see what is happening time-wise, all these things start to work better together. So here are strategies for initiation.
So initiation helps us get started on some. It's how we begin a task or independently generate ideas for tasks. When children are stressed, they really frequently will have trouble with initiation because it looks too big. They're stalled out, they can't get going, and we have a neurologically driven one and more of an anxiety driven one.
Yep.
The neurological is like there is no start button. Some of our 2E students, for whatever reason, the wiring is difficult for them. They can't even find where to start. Effective strategies, both at home and school, bullet point the directions. Give them the start point. Partially complete graphic organizers so that they don't feel so overwhelmed.
Right.
Samples is huge. Another side piece, in voice-to-text software, you will be able to generate information at least 40% faster compared to handwritten. And for a lot of students, they will actually can't get started because it looks too big, but once it's voice to text, or pair them with a buddy, but you need to be careful that they don't become buddy reliant. Okay.
So now for planning.
We had,
right?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Strategies for planning. That's anticipating, setting goals, step-by-step approach to tasks. I'm sure we've all heard it's today.
Let's do today.
Yeah. Or, it's Sunday and it's, Mom, I got to go to the store so I can get some stuff for Monday. They seem to live in eternal now. So for an individual who's a neurotypical student, they have a sense of the past. They have a sense of the future. Dr. Russell Barkley calls it a time event horizon. This is our guys where they have trouble with executive function. Okay. And part of it is, the answer to that is layer reminders. Whoops. Oh,
yep, there it is.
Okay. Make time visual. That's a huge one. Be able to see what the time looks like passing. One of the things, a pet peeve, is we're now going to digital clocks for young children. Analog clocks would allow them to see time passing. They lose that sense of time. Visual calendars, color coding, especially on websites, electronic reminders, cell phones, emails, text yourself, personal time, multiply. Now, the thing is, I'm just going to come back here. A lot of parents are concerned about the use of electronics. Take a look at your distraction management apps. There's quite a few of them out there for all platforms. It's well worth the investment. The personal time management is a fun one.
Multiplier. Yep.
It's, you ask them to guess how long it's going to take, and then they time it to see, and over a period of time, and one of my engineering students figured out they were 2.79 times off. Effective strategies, you can layer reminders, look ahead, provide lists of upcoming topics, sample project breakdowns. Parents can do this at home.
So strategies for organization of materials, and we've talked about organization and planning being very different things. For the organization, think of your child in his room, and if all the clutter that might be there, if you can help him, not you do it, but help him see, I would like to organize my desk here and have a place for everything. Remember, that is going to help him greatly.
Think about developing an education station.
Yes. And put homework in. These are organizational materials. Put homework in the front of a binder. If at the end of the day, especially middle school and high school kids are throwing things in their backpack, if they just use that plastic front, and they know when they go home, they have the security. Everything I have to do tonight is right there. They don't have to worry about, all of this clutter. And then, of course, online books really helps.
Right. And the thing is, you want one place, and to give people time for organization. Put that in right as part of it. Their own way to organize, and remember to organize. That's huge. A lot of times they don't remember they have something to remember.
Now, strategies for time itself.
Right. This is a huge one. It's 2 axes. This is time-based, urgent for half an hour to 48, less urgent. And this axis is how it impacts you, important to less important. So what you would do first is make a list of tasks and put it beside the matrix. Assess it, put the matrix results. When you're done, put them on some sort of a calendar or system reminder.
So we have to remember all of the areas that we've talked about are influenced by time. Now, what about time and self-management for a twice exceptional child? Basically, we need to understand, when did twice exceptional, when did that term begin? Is it new? Is it something that kids are doing today that they didn't used to do? They've probably always done it, but it was actually identified in the 1990s. And it basically means that a child has the giftedness and some sort of disability, something that holds them back at the same time. So what might that be? It could be giftedness in dyslexia or processing disorders, or obsessive compulsive, sensory processing like autism or spectrum, Tourette's, ADHD, anxiety, depression.
And with anxiety and depression, that's going to decrease their processing speed and their working memory, which is slowing it down.
So now, many 2E students operate out of fear. They're already ultra sensitive. They already know that things aren't working the way they wish, and they're fearful. And they don't understand how they're actually different than other kids for 2 reasons. Because they're gifted, and then they have the disability. So if we can get ourselves inside how that child feels, our successes are going to be greater. They know something's wrong, but they're not sure how to talk about it. They benefit from many strategies, and educational therapy allows one-to-one therapy. And it's brain-based. It can help bring success in the life for a 2E student. These blocks are mainly focused, as we've been saying, in the frontal lobe. The executive function portion of the brain is in the prefrontal cortex, and it can be addressed through training.
Right.
So, here's a study I had 2 students. One who was neurotypically gifted, just came in, did normal things, the way a lot of gifted kids do. Then I had one who was severely autistic and gifted at the same time. And the parents were most cooperative. I got my OSU comparative study benefits, or they allowed it. So I would see one for an hour and then the other. And I took all of these strategies. These are just a few out of a zillion. But I had them keyword, where they looked at an article and then they had to pick out what was important. I had them paraphrase, where they had to load them from their memory and say back what they had learned. I had them do multiple choice questions, where they had to again remember, and then a strategy called close, where you white out certain words in an article, and then they have to, out of their brain, come up with a word that makes sense. Much more difficult than it sounds. So here's my first guy. Here's my second guy. This is what was similar between them. So my first one, over and over, he had difficulty with the specificity of what we did. He wanted specific terms, very detailed, very
and Alex was the child with autism.
right.
So you were seeing
Right.
the rigidity and the very concrete aspect of the autism in with the giftedness.
Right. So, and it never failed. He always did this. Whereas Alan, being more neurotypical, it doesn't mean it's better or worse. He just had a different way. He wasn't always sure of himself. Actually, they both were, I think because they knew they were part of a study, they acted as though they weren't sure. But Alan would often take a risk and make a mistake. Whereas Alex, a lot of times, was just uptight
And
not
that's
willing.
a source of stress for individuals with autism because they tend to be very rule following. And so in this instance, it was another additional source of stress, even though it was supportive.
And they both did well with the strategies, which shows as long as the strategies are consistent, meaningful, directed towards the areas that we're looking to improve, we're going to be successful. And we stay in the positive at all times. So the twice exceptional holds extra keywords, extremely literal, ethical for every detail. That's exactly what every detail. Needed transition time. Didn't mention that before. Goes off topic to chat. Sometimes I thought it was just a way to relieve himself.
Well, also to
of all
decrease some of the stress
anxiety.
and anxiety.
And had trouble with other person perspective. That was another one we did. If write this article from the perspective of the President of the United States or the President of a congressman.
That's theory of mind.
Very, very difficult for the twice exceptional. Where the neurotypical did miss some key words, was not overly literal like the autistic, ethical, but not worried. He was absolutely worried. Could move easily. We'd stop one thing and start another, where the autism, got stuck on this thing and had to give extra time. The neurotypical stayed the course and did the other person, in fact, had a lot of fun with that. So they're just different strategies that need to be used for different reasons. So the neurotypical students often have organizational problems. Even though they're not twice exceptional, they still have organizational problems. And this is a wonderful book by this was my publisher of 3 of the 4 books, Dr. Webb, with a whole group of scientists and doctors, absolutely has done a stellar job clarifying the differences of all these different diagnoses.
And it's important to understand because sometimes those misdiagnoses will end up with a additional stress or waiting too long to get the help or the assumption and lead to underachievement in what would truly be a gifted person, but it's being hidden by some of these other things.
Really good point. So these strategies help the neurotypical as well as the twice exceptional. There's no, they all feel stress. It's just the degree to which they feel it. And in this case, we just look at the strategies and saying any gifted or any child really can get relief from the strategies in terms of stress and anxiety. So here we are. We want a successful child. We want potential to be at the level of their ability. We don't want them stressed, but at the same time, there's going to be some of that. And so then we give them a toolbox. And the toolbox is filled with all of these little tools that they pull out to use when they get in a problem.
And when they're using their tools, they're based in their strengths.
Right.
So the anxiety will go down, the stress level will go down. It's a way of quieting the amygdala and being able to bring up the processing speed so the child can actually show what they know.
So you may or may not have seen the movie, Mr. Holland's Opus, but in this is a very gifted young lady, the redhead, who goes into Richard Dreyfuss and says, I'm done, I'm not going to play the clarinet anymore, it's over, and squawks. And so she closes it up and leaves, and he says, come back, I need you. and he says, see me in the office at 8 tomorrow. So she comes back and he says to her, what do you like about yourself? This is what educational therapy does for kids. She says, well, she couldn't think of anything she liked, but she said, my dad likes my hair, my red hair, and says it reminds him of the sunset. So he calmly says, then play the sunset. She plays it much more beautifully than she did before. So we hope you find your sunset. We hope that some of these ideas have helped you with your child in your classroom, in your home, in your family. That was a sunset that I had just recently, and I hope you find you can celebrate your own. So thank you so much.
And again, if you would like some additional information, take a look at Dr. Carroll's books. Also, we have a YouTube channel and I have a Facebook under Midwest Educational Therapists and Associates. Both of us welcome information, questions from parents, teachers, and stakeholders in our children's lives.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our presentation. I'm Dr. Carol Strip-Whitney. I did many years of gifted education, started the Dublin Gifted Program for 15 years, was recruited to Olentangy, where I built their program for another 17 years. Prior to that, taught all of the grades, K through 8, and spent time with the counselors in the high school. I've written the 4 books that you saw on the screen. But more important than anything, I love what I do. And I love building the potential in children and have a strong passion for giftedness. Did my doctorate at Ohio State University. Love it.
Hi. Thank you so much for attending our presentation. Dr. Carroll and I really enjoy visiting with all of you and sharing our knowledge. I'm Julianne Ash. I'm a board-certified educational therapist. There's about 109 of us worldwide, so it's a brand new way of looking at how people learn. We look at individual strengths and then take a look at the processes that help them learn how to learn. When we're looking at adolescents, children, and adults at Midwest Educational Therapists, our therapy group, we try to individually tailor what they need in order to maximize their performance, help them embrace who they are in a positive message, and to be able to execute effectively and independently in the world based on their strengths. Thank you. We look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you.